Welcome back to RFL. The New York Police Department began using something called CompStat in the 1990s. Now, that system uses computers to track crime reports. It then holds precinct commanders accountable for crime conditions in their respective areas. It also seeks to hold precinct commanders accountable for the number of arrests, summonses, stop and frisks, and other things carried out by their officers. The system has been credited in part with New York City's drop in crime. Between 1990 and 2011, crime did drop precipitously. Homicides down 80%, robberies down 83%, and burglaries fell by 86%. Now, crime also fell nationwide during that time, but twice as much and for twice as long in New York City as opposed to the national numbers. But some say that it's become a system run amok.
We're being forced to arrest innocent people. We're being forced. Everything was about numbers, 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 numbers. They wanted X amount of summonses. They wanted X amount of arrests. They wanted stop and frisk. They wanted everything, and they were obsessed with the number.
That was police officer Adil Polanco. As a rookie patrol officer, says he was told to get out there and write summonses. But 3 years later, in 2008, his precinct got a new commanding officer who, in Polanco's own words, went, quote, ballistic with the numbers. The orders, he says, came from top commanders and trickled down. He says the NYPD became consumed with writing tickets, with stop and frisks, with arrests and manipulating crime reports. A year later, he says he complained to Internal Affairs. They did nothing. That's when Officer Polanco decided to tape record the incidents. And here's one of the incidents he recorded.
I want 250 to see something. I want a ghost town. I want to be able to echo from one end of the street to the other. You understand? That's what I want in a perfect world. So that's your mission. Guys need college, need activity, there you go. You gotta get me moved.
250s, by the way, refer to stop and frisks, and C summons are for violations like open containers of alcohol. Officer Polanco has been suspended from the force with full pay. Now, one of the voices speaking out on the NYPD's so-called numbers game is a guest on our panel tonight, Eli Silverman. He is a professor emeritus at John Jay College of Criminal Justice and the Graduate Center of CUNY. He's worked at the Department of Justice and the National Academy of Public Administration. His book, The Crime Numbers Game, which he co-authored with a retired captain from the NYPD, explores what is called in the book a, quote, system gone wild. And Professor Silverman, thanks for joining us tonight. What do you mean a system gone wild with the numbers?
It's a system that beforehand, in its original form, the numbers were a means to an end. Now the numbers are an end in themselves. So the system, everyone is rated on terms of the number of arrests, the number of summonses, the favorable crime statistics. So the system incentivizes people to fool around with the numbers and retrieve X number of summonses, X number of stop and frisk a day, and regardless of the merit of them. The system was designed to use it wisely. Now it's not used wisely.
It feels like, and I'm coming from an extreme layman's take here, but it sounds almost like the equivalent of teaching to the test that we've heard about for teachers.
Exactly. It's another example of the performance management system gone amok. And if you teach to the test, then you teach students how to pass the test. And it's a very analogous. In fact, one of the sponsors of our book, not sponsors, but one of the supporters of our book is Diane Ravitch, who was originally a supporter of No Child Left Behind. Now it's said the system has gone, turned on its head, just like in the police department.
And those numbers also let the NYPD show, hey, we've got crime improving in this precinct, crime dropping here, and it lets them really puff up the department.
Well, the department is stuck in a narrative. The narrative has been, we can beat crime down regardless of the number of police we have. And when the police force was at 41,000 and now has gone down to 35,000, the mayor and the police commissioner have proclaimed, doesn't matter, we can still drive it down. The commanders and their people are now rated on how their crime is in their areas, in their precinct, not overall, but how it was compared to the same period last year. So they have to show favorable numbers.
So how do we get from that to stop and frisk policies?
Because stop and frisk is a tool, a very useful tool. But at a certain point, when the mayor came in, the mayor and the police commissioner have increased the stop and frisk six-fold. It has gone from approximately 100,000 to almost 700,000 people. 87% of them are minority. Only a small percent yield anything, any guns or anything, and the majority of those arrests are then disclaimed in court. So at the same time we're widening the circle, wider net, the number of shootings are going up. This is an ineffective policy. Cops don't like it because it distances themselves from the community and it breeds resentment.
Well, we've had a number of people who've come on the program in the past week as we've been focusing on this, saying, you know what, we think it may be working. We think you're getting more guns off the street or you're finding fewer guns on the street. Are you saying the numbers show conclusively that stop and frisk doesn't work?
The way it's being employed now is dysfunctional. When you increase the number of stop and frisks and you have increased shootings with gun, does that suggest that it's effective? No, what it suggests is I have to bring in a certain amount of stop and frisk each day as a police officer, so I just look for it. I just look for a stop and frisk. It doesn't matter if it's not constitutional. It doesn't matter if it's not a reasonable suspicion. According to the U.S. Supreme Court, a stop and frisk has to be based on reasonable suspicion that crime has been made or about to be made. And it's very difficult to get that dismissed.
So when people say, just look at the crime numbers, look at the crime rate as we went through at the beginning of this segment,
right.
Murders down and aggravated assaults, and they say, well, that's the same period that stop and frisk has been in place.
No, it isn't. Because the bulk of that crime that went down before the stop and frisk escalated. Though the bulk of that crime was reduced during the period when stop and frisk was used wisely. But now, you see, when you have an orange, you can only squeeze so much juice out of it. When it's fresh, you can squeeze some juice out of it. But after a while, there's a very little juice left in that orange. And in order to extract more juice, you have to squeeze and squeeze and squeeze. That's what's happening now. We're widening the net in order to get more and more people. You can reduce crime. We could stop everyone on the street. We could stop every single, that's a logical extension. What the mayor and the police commissioner need to do is the same thing that the mayor did with soft drinks. Use it in moderation. Right now, there's no moderation in this system.
We're going to take a quick break. We're going to let the whole panel in on this as soon as we come back, so our conversation continues. But we want to remind you at home, head to our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/RichardFrenchLive. Sound off of what you've heard, and of course, the question that we continue to ask, stop and frisk, profiling or good policing. You can also let us know if you've got personal experience with this, either as somebody who's been stopped and frisked or somebody in law enforcement. You can also tweet us at RichFrenchLive.